Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lip Service, a podcast of our coming out stories. I am your host, Pam Myers, and I'm bringing you these stories that have been recorded from our LGBTQ plus community. We hope that you'll listen with open hearts and minds because understanding can build empathy and a more inclusive world for us all. So thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I want to welcome our guest today from Albuquerque. Welcome, Jason. Thanks so much for joining.
Absolutely, Pam. Thanks for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So, usually like to start from, the beginning of when you first started feeling like there was something different about you, for lack of a better
Sure,
term.
sure. Way back in the beginning,
Right.
I would say, for me, um, it was those middle school years. Kind of sixth, seventh, eighth grade. Just when things are changing with your body and everything in general.
Yes.
But that's when there's the first school dance, and that's when friends had their boyfriend and girlfriend at the 12-year-old, 13-year-old
Mm.
at phase. And kind of initially I'm like, well, that must be what you do at that age, even though it didn't feel natural. It was new to everybody, so I'm not really sure it felt natural or comfortable for anybody when
Mhm.
you're going through all those changes. But I think I knew fairly early on that what I was feeling was different and uncomfortable, was different than what my friends, my contemporaries were experiencing. And I think that's when I first knew. I'm not sure I could put a label on it or describe it, but I knew that I felt differently than those around me were saying how they felt.
And so did you find yourself listening, thinking, "Oh, I'm not really attracted to girls," or
I think it actually was absolutely that. It was, and I'm not even sure at that point if there was a strong attraction to males. I
Mhm.
think it was more that I realized I did not have the attraction to females
Yeah.
like you see everywhere around you, right? You watch a TV show or a movie, or even, like I said, my friends.
Right.
That's kind of how everybody was gravitating, and that didn't, I don't know, interest me, appeal to me. Um, Even though I'm not sure what the alternative was at that time. I think maybe I knew maybe what I didn't like before I realized I knew what I did like.
Right, that makes sense. I mean, you're at that age. I mean, your hormones are raging, right? And yeah, it's uh, not always easy to see a path forward.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, looking back, that's an age where you move out of elementary school and everything's different moving into middle school or junior high. And those can be tough years because of everything that's happening. And, they can be years where those around you may say something hurtful,
Mm.
may have opinions of things, and share them in a way that, like, well, that they're describing me, so I'm just going to keep that to myself, um, to kind of avoid, maybe the not so nice things being said about you, about me.
Right, right, right. And was this in New Mexico that this? Oh, okay.
It was, yeah. I'm born and raised here, and I have moved away a couple of times from different work opportunities. But I always find myself on my way back here to Albuquerque, and my mom and my brother and other extended family are here, so it will always be home.
Oh, wonderful. Um, there's a lot to be said, right, for that, for living in a place that you've grown up in and you have all that experience.
Yeah, just the familiarity gives you a, I don't know, for me it's a kind of a calming or a peaceful, um, because the surroundings are familiar, and I still needed to get my chili fix. So I needed to be here or near.
Right. And so, okay, so now you were you're in adolescence, you're feeling a sense of difference. And then what happened? You didn't act on it at that point, imagine, or
Didn't act on it, and I would say kind of a continuation into high school years, um, and that's probably where I don't know, I'll say went along with. Um, there's homecoming and prom, and those are, I think, kind of the big things.
right.
Um, and I graduated in high school in '92, so we're talking kind of late '80s when make that transition from mid school to high school, and I had friends that were girls and friends that were boys, and I didn't want to miss out on all of those things. So I did take a good female friend, both to I think it was homecoming in the junior year and prom in the senior year, because I didn't, like I said, I didn't want to miss out on those experiences.
Right.
But and I guess I think maybe going as friends is more of a thing now than it used to be, 30 years ago.
Mm.
A lot of things are done in friend group, but it just wasn't like that in 1989,
Mm.
at least from my standpoint. But I did have the opportunity to go to those events with a good female friend, and I don't know at that point if I was trying to play straight or pretend, or really just kind of fit in. I think just kind of go along with what everybody else is doing. I
Mhm.
think there's an element of that's probably the least risky,
Right.
and probably the way that you protect yourself. I was protecting myself from maybe being hurt or embarrassed or outed
Mhm.
at that age.
Mhm. And probably the easiest path given everything that's going on, right? At that point in time.
Absolutely, and I didn't play sports, and so I didn't have maybe some of those other outlets. I wasn't really coordinated to do some of those things, and so I dove into other interests, academic and otherwise. But sports wasn't one of them, and that's a big part of the social life in high school too. Is around who's on the baseball team and a cheerleader and this, that, and the other. So you're right. I think
Right.
it probably was also the path of least resistance.
Mhm. Well stated. Yes. Okay, and so then what
Yeah.
happened?
So then I went to college. I went to New Mexico State for my undergrad, and that was
Mhm.
probably the first opportunity to kind of I don't know. I think it was acknowledge some of these feelings the way that I was feeling, or thoughts that I had, but also kind of you're thrown into a mixing pot of all sorts of people from everywhere, and which I think is part of that college experience is you know being around folks that are different than you, and whatever that means, because it does really open your eyes and have you appreciate. But I think that gave me a little bit of a safe place, both geographically, right? I was 230 miles away from home in Albuquerque, and then just kind of in this mixing pot of people from everywhere, and different ways of life, and gosh, different religions, and it just and sexuality was certainly part of it.
Mhm.
I'm not sure I was yet comfortable, but I was at least starting to um, I don't know, embrace or realize it wasn't something that was just going to go away if I ignored it. um, the other thing that's interesting, Pam, because I don't want to say I have regrets for not coming out sooner, but in talking to folks and reading things on Reddit, and usually the advice that I give is you come out when you're ready, and that
Right.
means that's different to everybody. Everybody's situation is different, whether it's living situation or economically, or safety, personal safety.
Right.
And so it's kind of funny that I give that advice now to somebody maybe going through what I went through all those many years ago. Is that you get the question of when's the right time to come out. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, you know what? There really is no right or wrong time. It's when you feel you're ready.
Absolutely.
Um, and so that would have been helpful for me to hear as I don't know, 19-year-old Jason, um, making that transition from high school to college. But Pam, I think the thing that's interesting is, and this may be more interesting to those that are watching or listening, is I actually didn't come out until my early 30s.
Okay.
And so I was, well out of college. I was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years into in a work environment coming out of college. And one of the things that I remember, I spent 26 years in banking, and so this was in the banking space.
Mhm.
And I even remember then in 90, I don't know, probably 95 or 96, that kind of the peer group, and then the kind of the corporate ladder. Um, there wasn't anybody that I was aware of that was openly out,
Mm.
male or female. And at the time, the bank that I worked for was a California headquartered bank, but even up several rungs of the corporate ladder there, um, I didn't really see anybody that reflected me.
Mhm.
And that was kind of just an interesting aha. And I looked back on that as I had the chance to do some other things later in my career to try and be that role model for somebody experiencing and growing up today that I didn't have.
Mhm.
And it is really powerful, because all along I felt that me coming out, there was I don't know, a 95% chance that everything went fine. Heck, it may have even been a 99% chance that everything went fine, and the that I didn't get thrown out, and some of the terrible reactions that you hear of from time to time.
Mhm.
But it was amazing how powerful that 5% or that 1% could be, because I knew it was such a little chance
Mhm.
that there'd be anything negative. But that 1% kept me in the closet for years. And
Mhm.
so back to my comment about not regrets, I came out when I thought it was the right time for me to come out. Um, Although there's a stretch of my 20s that would have been, oh, I don't know, a whole lot better, maybe a whole lot easier,
Uh-huh.
maybe a whole lot more fun than they were otherwise. So maybe that's more like hindsight rather than regret.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, right, I share that, 'cause you feel like, "Oh, if I had come out earlier, I could have had those specific experiences that you're going through
Right.
your during your that period of your life." So how did it happen for you, if you don't mind my asking
No,
specifically?
not at all. So, one, I thought I must have been the greatest actor and should have, gotten an Oscar for my playing a straight man performance all those years. Turns out maybe I wasn't as convincing as I thought I was. But I will tell you that I was in Las Vegas, and so I guess this happened in Las Vegas, but it didn't stay there,
Mhm.
with some friends, and it was like 1 in the morning, and a very good friend of mine and I were playing a slot machine. And why I remember that level of detail, I'm not sure. But he asked in a very kind of nonchalant way, but it opened the door. And he asked, "So, do you like to date guys?" And it was just, I'm not even sure if he put a lot of thought into the actual words.
Mhm.
And we were friends, and so he probably could have said it a multitude of ways, and it would have been fine with me. But the way that he asked it, I could have answered yes, which I did. I could have answered no and just extended the charade a little bit. And but I decided, that's the moment. And it was just him and I. It was pretty quiet at 1 in the morning, wherever the heck we were, and that started a dialogue.
Mm.
And that was really kind of the starting point of starting to tell some friends, some that I knew either wouldn't be surprised or um, would be supportive. Um, and some of them were queer. So I knew their reaction was going to be, 100% fine. But I hadn't, I hadn't yet found my voice and comfort in having those words come out of my mouth,
Right.
until I did. And then once I did, that the second conversation was a little bit easy, and the third conversation, and I had some of those in person. I called up some friends that I've known for years that live in other states, and just called and say, hey, there's something I want to tell you, and have that conversation. And some of them were short, some of them were longer conversations. They were all good. There was nothing negative. They were all very supportive, and but I think that gave me the confidence to then be able to share the story a little bit more.
Mhm.
And at that time, maybe seeing some more role models out there, and having some friends that were queer, and my support system was a lot bigger. My social network was a lot bigger than it was at 16, 17, 18, where
Right.
it was home and it was school, and that's all there was.
Mhm.
Um, but it was such a freeing time to tell people, you know, to come out. And I'll share a story here, because
Yeah.
it's when I told my folks. And
Mm.
I told a couple of friends first, and I'm like, okay, that went well. And um, trying to think who I told next. I mean, I probably told a coworker or two.
Mhm.
Again, just because I knew it was a safe space and I could say the words.
Mhm.
Um, but I happened to be at a work function one night, and I'm on my way home, and I decided that was the moment. I hadn't planned it for days and weeks. It was very spur of the moment. And I said, I'm going to stop by my folks' house. And so I dropped in, and that itself wasn't unusual. And my maybe from, I don't know, pop culture or some of the reading that I did, the reaction that I got, again, it was favorable. So I'll premise that. I thought I was going to get my mom saying, "Yeah, I already knew," because like mom always knows, or at least in a lot of the stories that I've read. And that my dad, a blue collar guy, liked to play golf, and I thought he might be a little bit, not negative in any way, maybe a little bit more oblivious, quite honestly, that just wouldn't have picked up on details and things, that I thought. And I actually got the exact opposite reaction,
Oh, wow.
which was kind of surprising. Um, and so I started. Three of us were in the living room, and I'm talking to them, and I'm kind of looking more at my mom, and I get that very opposite reaction. It's like, oh my gosh, and you had to keep this to yourself all this time, and we're supportive, and
Oh.
um, you know, not what I thought. And then my dad is like, yeah, I kind of suspected. And the opposite reaction. And so the conversation kind of took a little bit of a turn. And one of the things that he said is, and I still remember it to this day, is he said, if you've got somebody in your life who doesn't like you or love you for who you are, then fuck them.
Wow.
And just in that moment, and I've told that story a couple of times, over the years, but that still resonates with me today. And I'm almost 52,
Right.
and that just stuck with me. And so again, it was good. That 1% or 5% that maybe wasn't going to go bad never came to fruition. But the power in saying those things and then getting the response that you hoped for, and dreamt of,
Oh,
um, it's about as well as it could go, I think.
wow.
But it was kind of funny that the roles that I expected, those two roles were there, just the other
Right.
direction.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, so it was a complete shift of what you anticipated, and then your dad made such a powerful statement. I mean, holy cow, that just made tears spring to my eyes hearing you say that. How validating and wonderful.
Absolutely. And the
Wow.
fact that he said it, this was just kind of a raw reaction, right? I
Mhm.
mean, this was probably, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes into a conversation in the living room. It's not like he had days to think about what he was going to say. And
Right.
this was just kind of a raw emotional reaction, but just so poignant, that,
Right.
and so declarative, that, and so that resonated with me. And that's probably helped me make some decisions on, even more so now,
Mhm.
that your friends and your chosen family and your family, and being able to pick, having the opportunity to pick who you spend your time with,
Right.
knowing that life's too short to spend time with, somebody who has a negative view of who I am or who I love. Um, I just can't justify that. And so, that has driven more than one social media purge in going through, and people that I hadn't talked to or in a while, or that shared content that was offensive to
Mm-hmm.
the queer community. And in
Mm-hmm.
some cases, not offensive towards me, but I'm like, they don't know they're talking about me, but they're talking about me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's also been powerful. Is thankfully I did have the support of my family, but it has helped me, kind of, I would say, prioritize and weed out people in my life at different points along the way.
Right. Right. Because we all seek validation. It's human nature, right? You want,
Absolutely, you
yeah.
want to be part of a community.
Yep.
Yeah, it is a validation
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Wow. Wow. That I just how wonderful that those sage words came from him,
Yes,
because that can help you on so many levels to the point that you're making, right? It on everything that you do in life moving forward.
absolutely.
Mm,
And that was, I think, maybe the motivation was, um, I was kind of dating somebody then, but it was still kind of,
okay.
on the, I don't know, the DL.
Mhm.
And I wanted to bring that person, I wanted to bring him into my whole life, not just, the slice of life where it was convenient or safe.
Right.
And so I realized I needed to rip the band-aid off to do that. That it wasn't ever just going to resolve itself. And if it goes well, then we'll proceed. If
Right.
it doesn't go well, then, well, I know now. And again, thankfully that wasn't the case. But then that evolved into my partner right now.
Mm,
We've been together 14 years.
congrats.
And yeah, thank you. And I wanted to, like I said, bring that person into my life, and he met my parents. I told my brother, and he was kind of doing the same thing because he was in a career and a place in his life where it was not widely shared or not widely known. So
Mm,
we kind of maybe supported each other in that regard, that we both wanted this, but we each had some very important step that we needed to take, and that was, that coming out experience with our immediate family.
wow. So are you saying your brother's also gay?
Not my brother, my partner.
Your partner. Okay, got it. Your partner's okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
But
So
I told my brother, I told my parents, and then I told my brother
mhm.
and others. And then I didn't anticipate this, Pam, but I've lived it, and I'm sure you and a lot of people can resonate with this. I kind of thought I came out
Oh,
right
yeah.
once and done, and learned that once you come out, there are different scenarios where you come out the rest of your life.
Correct.
Right, you come out with work people, you come out in different social settings, you maybe have somebody who uses a pronoun, or I get a lot of, would you and your wife like to,
Right.
um, and so that kind of takes its own, I don't know, a burst of courage,
Mhm.
to be able to, not that you are correcting people, but you're doing it in a, you know in a way that maybe they learn from it, just to not always assume. And that's been a good lesson for me, but I really didn't anticipate needing to tell versions of that in different settings.
Mm, mm,
um, and it almost becomes, I mean, it is part of my identity, part of all of our identities. um, but I can think of settings where you're part of a new team at work, or um, something socially, and it almost feels like it's, it follows my name and what I do, and because usually it's I'm saying and my partner, of 14 years, and saying he. But for the longest time, when I was back in my early days of career, and I didn't have that role model, the Monday morning conversations after a weekend are not very comfortable.
Right.
And because usually what people talk about is, how was your weekend? What did you do? Where did you go? And I was at that time playing the delicate dance of using gender neutral pronouns. There
Right.
was a lot of we and they,
Yes.
and not a lot of he or him. But again, part of the process that I really thought it was about a moment, and the moment was really just the start of many moments. It wasn't just a once and done moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. And what was gay life like back during that time that you came out in?
Back in the dark ages,
Yeah.
I can remember here, even before I was old enough. Um, I think in those days the only places that I can recall were the Pulse on Central,
Mm-hmm.
and like Fox's Booze and Cruise, which I never went in. But I remember going to the Pulse for the first time when they had a underage dance night, whatever it was, and just it's only a few miles down the road, but it felt like I was it felt like I was in a different world.
Yeah.
I probably had very wide eyes. But then you started to see more on TV. You started to see more role models. You started to hear, that was when I was going through this. That was in the height of AIDS,
Mm-hmm.
and those late '80s, early '90s, and so much of that wasn't talked about and was, I don't know, underground.
Mm-hmm.
That here I'm part of the community, and I didn't even fully understand or grasp that. Now, news is much easier to come by these days than it was in 30 years ago.
Right.
But I feel like there's even at this point in my story, there's still always those opportunities to come out or share that story, and there's a piece of being queer that is just part of it,
Yeah.
at least for me.
Yeah. 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 I agree. Is Are there any words of advice that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I think the biggest thing is, if you had a role model or have a role model in that process, I think we all have somewhat of a responsibility to pay that forward. So if having that role model was important to you, helpful for you, think about the generation that's behind you that maybe is looking for that role model or looking for that safe space.
Right.
That would be one piece of advice. The other piece was I ended up getting very involved, and this is the second financial institution I worked for, but the one that I worked for the longest, about 14 years. And I was in the Bay Area, San Francisco at the time, and resource groups and diversity, equity, and inclusion was on the rise.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, here's a great opportunity. I'm in a new city. My partner and I hadn't lived in San Francisco that long. And a lot of the coworkers I was meeting in person for the first time. And so I used that kind of as my clean slate to, right. Those people didn't need to know that I came out late in life. They just need to know I'm out now.
Right.
But I got involved in resource groups, and we stood up our first two resource groups. And I think that was just I didn't have the role model,
Mm-hmm.
but I can help improve that experience for others around, and the and be that role model for somebody else. And so that was an important thing for me too, is to look for those opportunities to get involved, because then you can make some real change. Now, with the way um, things are going today in 2025, it feels like quite a good deal of that stuff is moving backwards.
Mhm.
So I used to say our job is never done, and that's probably true now more than ever because we're backtracking in many areas, which is unfortunate.
Mm.
And so, at your employer, we got the chance to improve healthcare benefits so they were more inclusive. All right, it doesn't happen overnight. That took like 2 years. Um, we got a perfect 100% on the corporate equality index in our very first entry. We were a little bit late compared to some of our peer banks, but we had everything in place and we got that perfect score the first time. So there's certainly some things that I'm proud of. And had I not done that, I'd have never got the chance to be on a float going down Market Street in San Francisco, in the Mecca.
Right. How fun.
And so that opportunity was created. I've got some very good friends that kind of came from that interaction.
Mhm.
Maybe we didn't work together, but that was our common cause at that time.
Right.
And you really get DEI training involved in new hires, and you really can make a difference. But I didn't get into it for all of that. I thought if I can make a difference for one person who's the generation coming up from behind me. So
Mhm.
I've always had rainbow things around, and so even though it might not be like you know overt or like super obvious,
Mhm.
that my watch band and watch face, I usually have a pride flag. I'm working from home today, but a pride flag in my pencil cup,
Mhm.
just signaling that those are that it's a safe space, that I'm a safe space.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think getting involved in organizations or groups like that, the benefits just spin off, right? You don't realize like, I'm going to go in because I feel like I could make a difference and I want to see if I could make a difference. And then things happen, like you gain relationships, right? You meet new people, those relationships become deeper, and better, and you grow in a way that you may not have otherwise.
Absolutely. And if you've got whether it's a supervisor or some leader mentor in or outside your workplace, um, not only can they be a tremendous ally, they can kind of be that rock for you sometimes. Uh, one of the times in San Francisco when I was fairly new out there, and I was up on one of the executive floors, and I think it was like my boss's boss's boss or something like that.
Mhm.
Probably like the number two or three person in the whole bank, and they had the emotional intelligence around, uh, you know, uh, I hadn't come out to this person, but I did as a result of, hey, did you move here? Was it you and your wife? And I'm like, no. And he's like, were you and your husband? And I think he could just tell how uncomfortable I was.
Uh-huh.
Um, and he's like, oh, so you and a special someone? And I was able to answer yes to that.
Mhm.
And I don't know, that could have been a very awkward situation,
Right.
but he sensed that. He had the emotional intelligence to see maybe I was uncomfortable or fidgety, or I don't even know what. Maybe I was eight shades of red. Um, but he picked up on it and found kind of a nice way to let me off the hook.
Yeah. Uh,
Because I didn't want to lie,
right.
and the way he asked the questions, they were yes or no questions, and but they would be ones that you would normally elaborate on, and I was not ready to elaborate to, I don't know, I think the vice chairman of the bank, but
Yeah.
but super ally,
Mhm.
and I found that along the way.
Wow, that's wonderful. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, what is, before we let you go, what is life now like for
Yeah,
you?
so coming out of the pandemic was kind of towards the end of my 26 years that I did in banking. I was looking to do something different. I think maybe turning 50 had something to do with that.
Hmm.
Um, but also we were on, I think we were on Zooms like all day, every day for I don't even remember how long. And I was really looking forward to being out of that type of environment.
Yeah.
Uh, I went a full 180, Pam, and I became an entrepreneur and I started a mobile pet grooming business
Hmm.
here in the greater Albuquerque area. We had actually been using a pet groomer when I worked for the bank because it was convenient and saved a whole lot of time.
Hmm.
And that company closed down as a result of COVID. So we needed a new groomer, and kind of the opportunity. I'm like, wow, there's not a lot of mobile groomers out there, and now this one just went out of business. Where are all those customers going to go? So I did some kind of market research very quick because I figured the opportunity. So the other place closed on May 31st of that year,
Hmm.
and I filed the LLC paperwork on June 6th.
Wow.
Days later, and we officially opened and helped our first clients, had our first appointments on July 15th. So it moved very rapidly. But I'm happy to say we're closing in on our 3-year anniversary. We have a ton of repeat clients. We've won some kind of local awards for various things, and our headcount now, including me, is 10. So created some jobs.
Yeah.
Um, the workforce is 50% queer. It just worked out that way.
Yeah.
I didn't advertise, in any specific way other than the Indeeds and the Zip Recruiters, and which has been fantastic. So we did our first Pride Parade last year,
Yeah.
and drove one of our grooming vans in that, which was exciting to kind of be in the hometown Pride Parade.
Right.
And we're gearing up to do it again here in a couple of weeks, this June, with a even larger contingent of our staff. In fact, I think we're going to have everybody there.
Wow.
So,
Congrats.
those are, thank you. Those are exciting moments. Those are the payoff kind of things that
Yes.
you've been working and building and working and building, and that's a nice moment to kind of I don't know, step back for a moment. And I tend to just go, and maybe not stop and appreciate or recognize the success. But
Hmm.
that's certainly been an opportunity to say, well, this is something I wanted to build, and we built it, and here we are.
And look at you now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Look at you now. That's very exciting. And I want to give a shout out because you haven't mentioned the name, but I have kind of kept in touch with you over the whole journey of when you were starting and thinking of doing it. And then now we're a good customer of Wet Paws Mobile Grooming. So thank you for all that. That's
absolutely. and
I
and,
love
and
your
we
success story.
we appreciate your trust in us as well with the furry four-legged friends. And so then I used it. I feel like now I've got a little bit of a voice. And so we joined um, the Out Business Association, formerly the Gay Chamber here in town.
Great.
We've sponsored things with the New Mexico Gay Men's Chorus.
Mhm.
I'm on the board of Casa Q, which is an emergency shelter for youth 12 to 17 that are facing or have faced homelessness as a result of coming out.
Mhm.
And so, to me, those are the things where the rubber meets the road, and trying to make things better now, but also for that next generation.
Right. And standing together, forging together to be to support our community and
There
people.
is power in numbers, that is for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jason, thank you again so very much for being a guest on the podcast. I really
You bet. Well, thanks for doing this and collecting those stories that'll help so many others. And I will wish you and everybody a happy Pride.
thank you. Yes. Happy Pride, everyone. And thank you for listening. And if you are out there and need support and do not know where to go, you can contact us through our website, lipservice.media, and we will do everything that we can to connect you. So thank you again for your support and listening to these stories. Please share with your friends.